After the historic annual meeting in 1944, a vital question remained. Since the governing body was then closely identified with the Pennsylvania Corporation's 7-member board of directors, did this mean that the governing body could never be made up of more than 7 anointed Christians? Moreover, since the directors are elected by the members of the corporation, were the corporation members electing members of the governing body at the annual meeting each year? Are the directors and officers of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania and the members of the governing body one and the same? Or are they different? These questions were answered years later. They were answered at the annual meeting held on October 1st, 1971, another historic annual meeting. On that occasion, one of the speakers pointed out that the governing body preceded the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania by hundreds of years. Now, contrary to some who oppose Jehovah and the earthly part of his organization and claim there was no governing body in the first century, and hence they see no need for a governing body today, a governing body was formed at Pentecost of 33 CE, more than 18 centuries before the Pennsylvania Corporation came into existence.
We're going to hear from none other than Fred Franz, who gave a talk at the 59th Gilead graduation in which he argued strongly that there was no centralized authority ruling from Jerusalem in the first century. What we're going to hear are 2 parts from Fred Franz's talk at the Gilead graduation that spell out very clearly that there was no need for example, the Apostle Paul to receive authority from a governing body in Jerusalem in the first century.
And so, as we examine this account of these 2 most outstanding among the missionaries recorded in Bible history, we find that they were sent out especially by the Lord Jesus Christ, the head of the church, a fact which the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society has upheld and accepted ever since the society was formed. So we see how the Lord Jesus Christ, as the head of the church, has a right to act direct without other organizations in view, no matter who they are. He is the head of the church. And friends, notice that just as God used the Antioch congregation to send out the two of the most outstanding missionaries of the first century, Paul and Barnabas, so today Jehovah God is using the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania in collaboration with the New York Corporation to send out further missionaries, and they're determined to keep on in that course. That's something very, very gratifying.
You will notice that mentions of the governing body are conspicuous by their absence. Instead, Fred Franz is essentially saying, we don't need permission from any governing body to do what Jesus wants us to do, just as in the first century, the Antioch congregation independently issued orders sending out Paul and Barnabas to do their missionary tours. So today being in the 1970s, so today the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, in collaboration with the New York Corporation, is able to send out missionaries. What he was saying was, the president issues orders, the president being the president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, who at that time was Nathan Knorr, and it was kind of a given that Fred Franz would succeed Nathan Knorr as president. So Fred Franz had every reason, if he were an ambitious sort, to oppose the move at that time by the governing body arrangement to usurp the authority of the president. That's why there was a coup in the middle of 1975, and it was the governing body arrangement that prevailed, so that this concept that Fred Franz had himself come up with for power to be shared, just like it was in the time of the apostles, the governing body, who up to that point had just been puppets of the president, managed to prevail and say, no, we're either a governing body or we're not. Power is with us, basically. The president is just, from now on, going to be just a symbol, just a responsible person for the relevant legal entity, which is how it was from the 1970s onwards. But what we've had since then is an effort by the existing governing body to rewrite history, so that Jehovah's Witnesses today are being taught there's always been a governing body, the organisation has always had a governing body, and actually this governing body arrangement goes all the way back to the 1st century, to the time of the New Testament, and that's where we get our authority from to tell you what to do today as a governing body. That's why Tony Morris begins his talk with this rather tedious history lesson, which, if you think about it, is kind of hilarious, because he sets up a number of questions, vital questions, that began to be asked in the 1940s, 1944 in particular, and which weren't resolved until 1971.
In the Bethel dining room, after the noon meal, Brother Knorr read off a list of 15 to 20 brothers' names who were to report at his office immediately. And they were told to write a new study book using simple, everyday language, just as they would present basic Bible truths to someone at the door. Well, within months, that book was written, printed, and released as Let God Be True.
But isn't it interesting that in relating the story of how the Let God Be True book came to be, Robert Siranko, who's a governing body helper, lets slip that there wasn't necessarily a governing body pulling the strings at that time.
After the noon meal, Brother Knorr read off a list of 15 to 20 brothers' names who were to report at his office immediately.
Brother Knorr read off a list of 15 to 20 brothers' names who were to report to his office immediately. Isn't that interesting? We've just had, earlier in the annual meeting, Tony Morris jumping up and down trying to persuade Jehovah's Witnesses that there's always been a governing body. There's always been one, going as far back as the apostles, but apparently as recently as the Let God Be True book wasn't really a governing body, was it? It was Brother Knorr. It was a David Miscavige style presidency. These brothers weren't asked to report to the governing body conference room. They were to report to Brother Knorr's office, and you even see there a depiction of them all huddled round while Nathan Knorr gives them directions. He is the president. He's pulling the strings. At this time in Watchtower history, there was no governing body.